Welcome to No Clip, the podcast that's like a book club for people who don't think that books reward them enough for being good at them. I'm Chad Roderman.
And I'm Andy Kinnick.
And today, we're going to be talking about Tunic, a game that was developed by Isometricorp Games, published by Finji, and was released in 2022 on macOS, Windows, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, and the PlayStation 5.
But first, if you can give us a like or a rating, it would be greatly appreciated.
All right, so Tunic takes its name from the green tunic worn by its protagonist, an article of clothing that is famously worn by another particular video game mascot character. And this would lead one to believe that this game's primary inspiration is The Legend of Zelda.
Mm-hmm.
This is a lie that they have told all of us leading up to the game. So I feel like in many ways I was kind of far behind on this game because I didn't really pay any... I knew it was coming out and I knew that it looked cool, but I did not get it or play it or even think about it for a year. So I didn't know anything about this game going in, and I did assume that it was going to be a Zelda game.
Right.
But it is not a Zelda game. It is a Dark Souls game with a Zelda coat of paint on it. And it is crazy to me. And it completely destroyed me. Like, I had, in many ways, but I had absolutely no idea what I was getting into. And in a way, I feel like that is exactly the headspace you should be in when playing this game.
Yeah. This game caught my attention right away. Because as soon as it was shown off at E3, I somehow was watching it and was the target audience. So I knew what the combat was like from the very get-go, and knew that it was it had Dark Souls influence. So, but yeah, I think it takes specifically inspiration from older Zeldas. It has a focus on emulating the feel of old video games and not holding your hand, and you have to consult this in-game manual to learn certain mechanics. So I think that's kind of the more Zelda side of it. Also, it's kind of a isometric, kind of a Link to the Past style format. But yeah, the Zelda influence is looser than one might expect.
Yeah, it is I think as I was playing it, during a particular moment of playing it, I was because I'm just sitting alone on a couch and I'm just name me one way this game is like Zelda. I'll fucking wait. You can't do it. I'm not talking to anybody. If you think about it, for a while, yes, there are obvious things that this game does. The item system is similar, especially to the later Zelda, like the Ocarina of Time and Beyond, where you map a bunch of items to an on-screen control pad, and that determines where you go. And the game does technically have dungeons, but they are in no way like a Zelda dungeon. It's just sort of the way it's broken up. It is about as much like Zelda as Silent Hill 2 is. For a callback to that particular fan theory that I came up with.
Yeah, it's kind of like Hyper Light Drifter. Which also has very much some Zelda influence, but doesn't really have dungeons or puzzles. It's got more of a combat and exploration focus. It's so close to the kind of game I would want to make if I made a game. But I would want to have the Zelda puzzles in there.
Right, yeah. This game does not have Zelda puzzles. It has horseshit puzzles for insane people. And by that, what I mean by all of that is really more the puzzles in this game are for people who are just much smarter than I am, and they're all optional.
Yeah, it's another one of those games where I feel playing it in our format diminishes the experience, because if you have a 2-week deadline, you're gonna feel so much more stressed out, being fuck this manual.
Yeah, I'm we talk about this all the time. and I think it's like part of it is definitely to curb expectations to an extent. Like, we say at the outset, like if you go to our website or like see anything that we did like very early, we're always like, we're not really reviewers. This is a book club thing. We incorporated into the whole like tagline for the show. And a lot of it is to be like, we're doing these things in what is not really their natural habitat. We're playing the game quickly, usually over a period of time. And for us on this particular episode, I'm reasonably sure that isn't actually really true, because you played the game a while ago.
Yeah, last January, so almost a year ago.
Yeah, and I got to take a nice leisurely time with it because I'm just on vacation. So I was kicking back. When I finished the game, I was missing 3 pages to the manual. So I got to like really luxuriate in what the game was giving me. And it's like, this is a luxury I wish that I had with games like Disco Elysium, where I was like trying to get in like 1 hour, 2 hour play sessions wherever I could with that game. And this one I got to just kind of like put my feet up and go to town with it. And so, yeah, but what led us to this conversation in the first place is that the manual does contain some puzzles that are just outright like, they're like fucking crazy. And the language is apparently translatable. I didn't look into it that far. And I don't know if it is like a 1-to-1 cipher where like this symbol is A, or if it's like an actual conlang where you have to like figure out what the syntax is. I'm guessing it isn't that.
Yeah, it takes way more effort.
Yeah.
To create something like that. But I mean, I guess it's possible.
Yeah, there's just like so much context that the majority of players, like I would be comfortable saying 99% of players will never ever have. With some of this stuff.
Yeah, I always feel like this kind of stuff is like crazy interesting and cool. But like there is always part of my like brain that's like, if only you could make it like a little bit more accessible. Like, so that, like, more people could, like, actually figure it out. But then I don't know if that, like, takes away from it. Like, the fact that it's so secret is, like, part of the appeal to the people that like it. So, yeah, I always feel conflicted, because I feel like I'm on the borderline. Where, like, So I always am like, I wish I could figure that out on my own, but I ended up looking it up. I find myself feeling that way often with games.
Yeah, I do wish... this is an instance where I think they did it right in terms of how to implement it into a game like this. Like, this game is for a much more niche audience than I think it advertises itself as. But even, like, toward a broader than just the, like, Steven Sausage Roll people. Like, the people who want the most intense... like well-designed version of this thing. Like, none of the stuff that requires all that extra effort is necessary to complete the game. And I think that the experience, particularly, and we'll talk about it in a bit, the sort of meta-textual parts of the game are still really enjoyable even if you don't engage with that stuff. So I think it's done well in that case. But then as people like us, I want to know, like, I would like it to be more accessible for me, but like maybe there is a game out there that's going to give me a similar feeling, but like for people with fewer brain cells like myself. So yeah, like I need like the smooth brain version of this game to thoroughly enjoy and feel smart about myself, because like the stuff I googled, and spoilers for this whole game.
Yeah, big spoiler warning.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that you have to do in this game, and some things that you don't have to do. And one of the things that you don't have to do is open the mountain door.
Right.
And I ended up looking up how to do it, and it is one of the most, like... like, one of those things where you feel like, I could have figured this out if I literally had nothing else to spend my brain power on.
Yeah. Well, you end up doing this.
Right.
If you want to try and figure it out on your own.
Yeah, it does seem just like I mean, from what I've seen, that looks reasonably close to the correct answer. If it isn't the correct answer,
I think I messed up this little section right here.
Oh, with all the eraser marks.
Yeah,
that can make sense.
but anyway,
Yeah, the fact that everything is so like spaced out. You have to you would have to reconstruct the grid and then puzzle out what the actual symbols mean, that's like a whole other leap of faith.
Yeah,
and I was like,
that's the hardest part.
Yeah, and we're like 2 hours from when we're gonna record, and I was like, I'll just hit the old IGN guide for that one.
Yeah. It would be nice if there was more of a reward than just the last page of the book.
Yeah. I like it because the last page of the book is well, I mean, I don't know if it was your last page of the book.
It's the cover, yeah.
Yeah, because my last page of the book, for certain, was the one where I had to get fairies. Because I sure didn't know where any of those were or what it was that it was wanting me to do. So... Yeah, like I like the first page, like being behind the door, because I like the developer message on the inside cover. Because it does feel like that is the culmination of everything that anyone. There's like 3 levels. There's like casual player, and there's like guy who wants to see everything, and then there's like guy who's actually capable of seeing everything.
Right.
Like, having it be the culmination of the middle part seems right to me.
Yeah, it would be nice if there was, like, a boss fight or something. Anything else.
Yeah,
though.
I mean, did you go around to the back of the mountain?
What do you mean?
I made it up.
Okay.
There's lots of things in this game where you can just go around the back of stuff.
Yeah.
As far as I know, there isn't anything else up there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you didn't find the whole secret dungeon behind the mountain?
Yeah, there's the color dungeon was in there. So I think as we talk more about, because obviously we're not going to spend the entire first half of the podcast just talking about things that we probably didn't even do. Before we go on, I do want to have just like a quick woe is me moment.
Sure.
Just to sort of set expectations. Because this game is difficult to see at times. There are things in the game that I really like. There are hidden passages that you can come out the other side of. Like, they're there the whole time, but they act as shortcuts once you know about them. I think that's absolutely genius. The hidden paths that hide secrets, I think, are fine, because most of the time you're trying to figure out how to get from where you are to where you saw a thing, and so you're already probing the areas. But I take a bit of issue, I don't take issue in terms of the game. I would like to talk to any other people who are vision impaired to see if they had similar problems. But there were lots of times where the intended path, I was just moving the control stick and going, I hope I find it, because there's like a staircase in the darkness here and I just cannot see it, and I have to keep doing that. So like I do, this has come up many times, like there are just certain things in games that I can't really deal with because of my eyesight. But like this game had a whole lot of them. And I think, to me, the biggest offender, because like I lose a few minutes over the course of the game trying to find staircases that are right in front of me. But there are these enemies that have like a health drain effect when they hit you. Like it's like a whole class of enemies. You see like several of them throughout the game. And whenever they hit you, the screen gets this like blue-white tint over top of it. And the moment that happens, I cannot see my character anymore. Like, he's gone. The range that I have on attacks, those like shining blue Spider-Men, if they hit me one time, I died 100% because I just didn't know where anything was. So if I'm probably going to talk about the difficulty of this game like a fair amount. Keep in mind that I'm probably worse at it than similarly skilled people, because I can't see good. But yeah.
That surprises me a little bit. The only area I feel like it is the forest for me at the very beginning. It just feels like it cranks it up to 11 with all of like the foliage and
Oh yeah.
like it's kind of obscuring the like what you're looking at a little bit, a little over detailed.
There's like a little secret spider zone down south from the place where you first enter the forest,
Mm-hmm.
and you just have to kind of like stumble into it. From what I could tell, like there you have to go like between trees and shit.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
is pretty wild in there, but I think that area is so small that I didn't really like. It didn't clock to me
Yeah.
like, oh, this is really hard
It's
to see, and I
yeah.
probably missed stuff too.
Yeah, it's the only one that feels like a little overly visually noisy to me, personally.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know. I missed a lot of stuff. Some of it's going to be visual, but then a lot of it is just going to be like bad game sense, like didn't pick up on where things were.
Yeah.
The magic dagger. If I hadn't gone to complete the true ending, I wouldn't have known what it was. I picked it up 2 hours ago.
The ice thing?
I never used it. I don't know
Okay.
what it does.
Okay.
It's
Is it
just
like a
called
blue
the magic
Is it a
dagger.
blue necklace? Is that what it looks like?
Maybe it was like a blade inside of like a crystal.
Okay.
It's on the map in the Western Gardens.
Okay. I think that's what it is.
Yeah, that thing. Whatever it is, I just found it, and it like made a big deal about me picking it up, and I was like, "Oh, I wonder if it would have been good for me to have this during the whole game."
Yeah, I didn't find the hourglass for a really long time.
I
So,
also didn't find that one until I went back for pages.
yeah.
So.
No, I mean, I think that's normal.
I mean, fair.
Yeah. It's just that kind of game. I think that's like an interesting thing to talk about up top is like the game doesn't tell you how it works. Like it just, there's no dialogue. The dialogue that is in there is all written in a language you can't read. And then you have this manual that you have to go through, and it has like pictures and illustrations that clue you in, and sometimes explicitly tells you about some mechanics. But like it was like I just overlooked the fact that you can run. Like it was like I was like
yeah.
halfway through the game before I realized holding the dodge button lets you run. It took me a while to figure out how to upgrade my stats. Like if you're not paying close attention to the manual, you can overlook important mechanics for a while.
Yeah, I think, and I sort of mentioned this up front, where I think a lot of the metatextual elements of this game are really interesting and cool. One of the things that I noticed about this game is that like there were definitely things that I was thinking about because of my familiarity with essentially with Zelda games and with Dark Souls games. They were like, am I going to need this? Am I going to be able to do this and that and those? And so I was actively sort of looking for things. The stat thing is what kind of what triggered it for me, is because I noticed the stat items going into a separate part of the inventory.
Right.
Like they weren't in where the usable items were, or whatever it was. Maybe they only go there after you find the page. I'm not actually sure. But eventually I realized, like, I don't know what these are, and like look through the manual for an explanation for them.
Right.
And there are other things I'm sure that people could just figure out potentially on their own. Like if by any chance you happen to hold A for 3 seconds, you will just do that pray pose. So hypothetically, someone could do that and then try it at a bunch of different locations and maybe find stuff early.
Yeah, that's like maybe my favorite thing that the game does, or at least one of them, is like you have that ability from the very beginning, and there's like the warp pads are there, and like when you learn that you can do it, it just like it's one of those things that like recontextualize the game. Like now you want to go back and try it in a bunch of different places. So yeah, I think that's really really cool, and you get like a little miniature mind-blowing moment when you realize you can do it.
Yeah, like every new mechanic opens up like a different thing that you can be looking out for, and enhances the gameplay. Like it makes it more deep, because you know that you have more options than you thought, and none of it is like actually unlocked aside from weapons and items and stuff. which is very cool. I agree. I think it might be one of my favorite things about the game, if not my favorite as well.
Mm-hmm. Special mention to after completing the mine area, and you go up the stairs, and you end up at the top of the mountain by the door.
Oh yeah, that was to me honestly that was like that was less flabbergasting of a moment than earlier in the very same part where I realized that there was a path to the left of a pillar. And I was like, God damn it. I've been running this level over and over again, just trying to get back to where I was. And there was a shortcut there the whole time. Like, every time the game revealed one of those to you, I kept being like, oh, look at this. It's like Dark Souls.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. We talked about this last week when we did our pocket episode on Anodyne about you being somebody who just appreciates a game that has an air of mystery about it.
Yeah.
And this game just seems like 100 times that.
Yeah. Yeah, it also, like, tickles another part. Like, I've mentioned this on other episodes where, like, I have this idea for, like, essentially Truman Show the game, where it's, like, on, like, the face of it, it's just, like, a regular game. In this case, like, a Zelda Dark Souls style game. But then there's, like, a secret component to it. And this doesn't go quite all in on it, like my hypothetical Truman Show game. But, like, it has that, like, extra layer where it's, like, once you, like, crack that code and you are able to see all the secret shit in the manual now, all the yellow lines and shit that are in there, it's, like, now the game is all about, like, going around and trying to find the fairies. And, like, it's, like, it becomes, like, a totally different thing. And that can be, like, yeah, really satisfying. Like, I wish, and maybe this is just a me thing, because I guess this is technically in there, but, like, I wish it was a little bit more, like, prevalent or noticeable from the start, that there's, like, something more to the world to discover. And I think, like, the manual does kind of clue you into that, but, like, I feel like it could be, like, introduced to the player a little bit more clearly. It would be the only thing that I think would make it better. Is if I was looking for it. Because, like, I think, like, most of the game, I'm, like, putting off trying to decipher the manual because I feel like it's going to take a lot of effort. And I'm just kind of, like, playing, like, the Zelda game that it is. And then they don't, like, mesh for me, but that might just be, like, my play style.
I mean, I think that's fair. To me, it was like when I saw the manual for the first time, which is very early. There's a page you get like pretty much right away. Mm-hmm. To me, it was like, this is an interesting way of doing a tutorial because it was showing me the first things you get show you like button commands, and later you find out like what stuff is, and there's a map, and you get those very early, and they're very useful in a practical tooltip kind of way. And that's how I interpreted it at first. I was like, it's cool because it's like most of the text is not there in terms of like my ability to read it. So I just gloss over that, but it says, hey, look at this, press A to roll. When there's dust, those are your invincibility frames. I'm like, got it, understand. I'll continue playing the game. And then as I pick them up. And so it felt very natural to me to grow from tutorial into narrative supplement into alternate reality game.
Yeah.
Like it scaled up in like a very like straight up sort of way.
Yeah, like I avoided like spoilers for this game, but I did hear a couple people online say that like, oh, it's got like crazy cool secrets in it, like go play Tunic right away. You know, like stop watching this video and go play Tunic. But so like I feel like I was just hyper aware of it. Like I was like it for the longest time I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to like translate this language to solve a puzzle. Like, and I was like, I really don't want to do that. So I kept trying to think of like what I knew there was gonna be some kind of meta thing to the manual. Or at least I had that very strong hunch from like almost the get-go.
Yeah, and it's like it's such an interesting it like regardless of how you approach it from the beginning, like it's such an interesting goal in the game because like hypothetically you don't know how many pages there are,
Right.
because like unless you find the back cover, which you won't, because you have to fucking go put in inputs on the D-pad in random locations in order to get the last page. But like you don't know how many pages there are, so it's always like constantly every time you find a new one. And like I don't know about you, but like I hit a point in the game where I felt like I wasn't really finding new pages very often.
Yeah, like in the middle-ish.
Middle to like almost the late game, like right at the end is where you get more because you get the ability to teleport and shit. So it ended up being just sort of like a this thing that just kept building over the course of the entire game. So I don't know. To me, it maintained the cool mysteriousness from the beginning to the end, up until the point where I said, fuck it, and Googled a guide on how to find the 3 pages I was missing. So, yeah, I don't know. That's why I think it nails the mystery thing.
Oh, yeah. No, it does, like, very well. I just, like, there's a part of me that, like, kind of wishes it was a little bit more integrated with the rest of the game. And was, like, less like its own meta game on top of the game. But I also fair. Like that that's the way it is, you know. It's not an actual complaint, but yeah. And more like how I would do it if I made the game.
Right.
Kind of a thing.
To tie it into like our discussion about the game genre and like sort of what its inspirations draw from, like part of the reason that I didn't ever notice the codes and shit in the manual is because a lot of what I would use the manual for was the maps. And you realize pretty quickly that the game's dungeons don't really require maps.
Right.
They're very straight shots. And difficult to... I mean, there are a few that are more difficult to navigate, but for the most part are just like clear rooms. They feel like Dark Souls dungeons.
Yeah.
Like you go in, you kill the enemies. If you die, you have to do it again.
Yeah, it's the combat. That's the challenging thing.
Yeah, you kill things, you do death running, you open shortcuts. It's like the classic Dark Souls progression in this game. And so I stopped looking at the maps. And because I stopped looking at the maps, I wasn't noticing patterns in the manual.
Right.
Which is why all of this kind of like struck me all at the end. That was like, wow, there's actually a lot here.
Yeah, like
it's a lot richer than I thought it was.
Yeah, that almost feels like what the whiteboard pitch for it was. That like the player will have a moment where they're like, wait a minute. You know, like they'll have been using the manual like the whole game for little things, and they'll have a moment where they're like, whoa. And then they'll look through it and then notice other things. So that almost feels like the ideal experience to have with it. Yeah.
Though I will say that there have been... I don't want to equivocate these things. Like the journals in what I'm going to bring up is like journals in Mystery May games that we've done in the past, where it'll be like, this is like a list of events that have happened. Even as recently as Signalis, like the text logs and the radio station like lists and stuff were things that I would refer to, and when I was struggling with a puzzle, would go back and like rifle through the information to find stuff. Whereas in Tunic, I feel like when I was stuck, the first thing I did was not open the manual and start flipping through pages. I felt like I would more often explore with my eyes, my special eyes, to try and find like things that I may have missed, and I wouldn't go to the manual. And to me, like that is the biggest weak point of the manual aspect of the game, is that. And God, we've been talking for a while about this manual.
I mean,
so
it's like, yeah, it's like the big. I mean, that's like the big thing about the game, like the big unique element.
That's true. Like that's the selling point, right?
Yeah.
Like it's the unique, cool thing.
Yeah, you can buy physical printouts of it, like on Etsy and stuff.
Oh, let me fucking do that real fast. All right. But yeah, I don't know. I felt like I wish there was more of a reason to want to go to it, but I think that the way to do that is to either A, increase the amount of readable text in the manual, which I think takes away a little bit from the air of mystery, or put a lot more annotations in it because you get those like hand-drawn things in the margins, but now you've just made House of Leaves by accident, and that becomes a lot more confusing.
Yeah, and you don't want the player to catch on too quick.
Right.
So yeah, you kind of like had to spread those out.
Though I will say, I do think that the manual in this game does count as ergodic literature. If anybody is, if anyone's keeping score.
Well, yeah, and it gives the game like this cool feeling of like rediscovery, like like you're following in someone's footsteps, like who had the manual before you, and like that's a cool thing to like participate in a video game.
It does even a lot more than that too. Like it contextualizes the game as being a game within its own universe, in a way, or in this universe like they make instruction manuals for life,
like a ritual kind of thing,
right? Like there's so many different like interpretations of this booklet that would have come jammed into an NES case, and my dog would have eaten it. And it's just, I don't know, it's very rich to me. I feel like I like the fact that it adds a metatextual layer to it, and I like the way that they've gone about like hiding things in it. But even more than that, I just like its existence. That is the thing that is most cool about it.
I guess to kind of segue, are you... I know you have not played The Witness, but do you know much of anything about it?
Yeah, I know a decent amount. I know enough to know that I would not be able to finish the game.
Well, I guess so. Spoilers for The Witness, then, I guess. But like, I liked how like the doors, like there were these golden doors, were basically just like witness puzzles. Like where you had to like trace the lines on the doors to open them. I thought that was interesting. The most spoilery thing is that you reach a point in The Witness where you start noticing those patterns in the environment, and then you can like trace the lines in the environment, and then like that's like kind of like a meta layer on top. So this felt like I took inspiration from The Witness weirdly once like I figured out those puzzles or like started noticing them. And also there was this one part where you go into a door that you have to open with one of those line puzzles, and you go into like this like 3D like prismatic area, which felt like a reference to Fez. So I just thought that was
fair point.
Yeah, I just thought that was cool to notice.
My immediate thought was the 2D parts of Mario Odyssey. But
yeah, I also thought Captain
Fez is
Toad.
actually kind of a better. Oh yeah, Captain Toad.
Yeah.
Well, the whole game has that diorama feel. I will say when I got to that one, in my quest to get 10 fairies, I was like, this is the only one of these that I would have been able to solve by myself.
Yeah.
Like, I would have actually figured this one out, whereas the other ones, I tried to do. I read how the puzzles worked, and then I went to the thing, and then I tried to do it, and it never worked. And I don't know what I was doing wrong. There's one on the mountaintop that's like a bunch of rocks laid out,
right,
and the first instruction was up, and I was just staring at it going like, how do you start at up? Like, I couldn't figure out how up could have been the first command.
Yeah,
I just got totally lost.
Yeah, some of them are pushing it, I think, in figure out ability.
It seems
sure.
like one of them
like knowing
is
where
spinning around.
Yeah,
which
the
makes
windmill.
it really. Yeah, that's fucking impossible.
Yeah, I just said fuck it with that one. I was like gonna try and figure it out, and I was like, trying to like maneuver to an angle where I can like see the whole windmill.
Nightmare, absolute true nightmare. Speaking of nightmarish, this game does not ever tell you where to go. What are your thoughts? Mild spoiler on my thoughts. I started this by saying, speaking of nightmarish, but what do you think about it? What do you think about the more self-directed play of this game?
I feel like it makes for a really slow start. Like I felt like the amount of time I spent kind of wandering around, not knowing where to go, was very concentrated at the beginning of the game. But like I think once I got like more into it, it got easier and easier. Yeah, like I don't remember. Do you have to get a key to get into the forest or something? I felt like even just getting to the first area felt like it took a little while. And then like ringing the bells does feel like you have to do a little bit of wandering. Like the second one, you just have to keep going to new places before like you finally get to it. So it can, I think it feels a little bit concentrated towards the beginning of the game, but like I don't think I really minded it that much. Like I think once I had like the sword and the shield, I felt like good to go, and it didn't really bother me anymore.
Oh man, we should talk about combat in the second half because we're already sort of like running into that territory.
Yeah.
But I have some questions for you.
Okay.
But yeah, I would say one amendment to that, because I agree with you. I think it did lend itself to sort of a slow start. Which I think, generally speaking, I think is fine. I think
it draws you in a little.
Yeah,
if you're
and
up
you have
to
to
the
get
challenge.
your bearings.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. And I did not know that there was going to be a challenge. We'll get into that. But yeah, you have to sort of like get your bearings and understand like how the game works before you find your way into the first like main dungeon. And the game gives you a convenient checklist for the first two areas. It's like, go to the forest, get the sword, go to the well, and then the abyss, or whatever it's called. The place where there's no lights, and then you go through those and like it kind of checks it off, and then it really lets go and says, find these three things, here's some relatively cryptic information about where they might be, good luck. And then you just wander and have to figure out how to get places. But yeah, my one amendment to that though is that it also led to a slow end, because
yeah, the ending is a bit drawn out.
Yeah, like a bit is a word. Is two words. I would say it is ludicrously drawn out and is my least favorite part of the entire game. The find the 6 hero graves and get your soul back was like an hour and a half, guessing, about an hour and a half of just walking around. You fight like 6 enemies. There's not really a puzzle. There's a puzzle to like one of them. I think.
It's just like I think the puzzle, or like the thing that's supposed to be cool about it, is just like figuring out how to navigate the world when certain areas are blocked off.
Right.
So
but I feel like that only comes up like twice.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
I think at least like 3 different places you can't get to the way you usually would, and you had to find like a different way in.
Yeah, the forest comes to mind. And then I think I fast traveled.
Right, yeah, you have to make use of the fast travel to like warp to places and stuff.
Right. Which I was going to do anyway. Because I'm not walking around. So to me, it was just like mind numbing. and then I died like 10 times to the fucking electric cougar in the mine before I figured out a strat for that. So it was I don't know. I think the end of the game is like, I think it's boring. I hated it. I thought it sucked ass. Like just the getting the soul part. Like I think genuinely just terrible for me, like a bad experience. And then intriguing at the beginning, and then that whole middle part I felt a little bit mushy about it. Like there were parts that I really liked being able to go find stuff on my own, and then other parts where I was like, where I actually was going through the manual going like, give me anything. Like anything at all, tell me what to do. After I put the lock or the keys in the locks, I was like, now what? Like I went to the mountain and I walked around for a while, and I was like kicking in people's doors asking if they've seen a stray ghost fox around. It was like a whole thing. And took me a long time to realize like what it was that I actually needed to do to progress. And I don't know, it just wasn't like, maybe for some people that's like the shit. The fact that they don't have like a good idea of what they're doing and that they have to go and figure it out themselves. But for me, it was very much like a big speed bump, a speed mountain that that sucked all of the momentum out of the game and just made me lose interest in what I was doing.
Yeah, I think that sounds reasonable. Like for me, I think it hit a real sweet spot in the middle, and it never really took me too long to find where to go. But yeah, like, and I did enjoy like the like getting my body back section. But I think it's totally reasonable. Yeah, like there's no combat. Yeah, like to not enjoy it. Like I think it is kind of comparable to like go get the Triforce charts or like go get all this shit in Metroid Prime or whatever. But yeah, I found it satisfying to kind of like navigate the world again in a different way. But yeah, I think your criticisms are valid.
I don't know. I mean, that's like my main thing about it. Like, otherwise, like I really like a lot of the things that the game does to keep a hands-off approach and let the player figure things out on their own. The fact that entire mechanics aren't told to you is very interesting, and it leads to people having different experiences with their game and allows for this kind of book club discussion where people can go in and be like, did you fucking know that you could do this shit or whatever? Yeah. I only found out today that apparently you can parry. I don't know how to do it. I would have been trying it constantly if I did.
I think you have to like double tap the button, like the block button or something. It's something like that. I would do it on accident occasionally.
That sounds like it's probably double tap the block button then. Mm-hmm. We should explain why it never happened on accident for me. But once again, we're talking about that fun combat system in a minute. I just wish that there were a few more signposts, like potentially even literal signposts in the ground that I could look at and give me an indication of where I should go.
Yeah.
But otherwise, yeah, I think that the game's structure is really strong. And I don't want to like overstate how much these things detracted from the experience, because it was the world that they made is actually very fun to explore and has a lot in it to explore, but it just has maybe even slightly too much in it that I kept getting distracted and not being able to find my way to places.
Yeah, and I might even have a little bit of like rose-colored glasses because I played it a year ago.
Fair, yeah.
But do we want to jump back in and talk about the combat?
After the break. Yeah.
All right.
Welcome back. So we promised to talk about the combat system, which I will do now. Here's what I am curious about.
Okay.
And I don't take this as me not believing you, because I've also seen you play Dark Souls games.
Right.
And despite the fact that I find your way of playing Dark Souls abhorrent, you are always able to you've completed Dark Souls games that I have not completed, using your particular strats. So my question is, I don't understand how you beat this game, given that your shield is 2 toilet paper rolls stapled to the back of a pizza box. I felt like every time I pressed the R button, I just fell over dead, like without a second to do anything. Like almost, it blocked like 0 attacks from enemies. And it took like 7 hours for him to put it in front of his body. Like, that was my shield experience, and I very quickly just said, fuck it, and stopped using it completely. And I feel like your experience is like so very much the opposite that it's going to be an interesting sort of conversation.
Yeah, are you sure your controller wasn't broken?
No, I did test that because I was like, I pressed the R button like 1,000 years ago, and yet I was still hit through the block.
Were you using the lock on?
Yes.
Huh.
But I think that may have been part of what fucked me. Because if you're locked onto somebody and they die,
Right.
you take a second before you'll lock onto somebody else, and they
Right.
can still hit you even if you're blocking. And I felt like a lot of the time when I resorted to blocking, it was usually when I was overwhelmed with something.
Right.
But yeah, did you play the way that I expected you to play, which is to use the shield a lot?
Yeah. Block 100% of attacks. Unless they're like big enemies will like destroy you if you block, so you have to dodge them. But
Yeah.
like every regular enemy, I'm going sword and board for all of them.
So you sort and have a great time.
Yeah, sword and have a great time.
I really want to
All the
establish
livelong
that
day.
so that we can print like T-shirts and bumper stickers.
Yeah,
that
so I
say
guess I'll
that
explain
on
it then. So the Dark Souls community calls playing with a sword and shield like I do and blocking things sword and board because they think it is boring. And prefer to roll and through attacks and stuff. And I, despite playing things like Bloodborne and Monster Hunter and games where you have to dodge through, in Souls games, for some reason, I can't not just block stuff. Like the 100% block with the shield is just the way I like to play, so I call it sword and have a great time.
Bloodborne is a really good comparison to this game, though, because like in Bloodborne, there's one shield and it sucks.
It works. I don't know what you were doing, man.
Yeah, I evidently was shielding wrong because I would try and there are a few bosses. Read.
Yeah,
all
bosses
of them.
you have to take different approaches for.
Yeah, and I would try to block if my other strategies were not working well, and 100% of the time blocking was worse.
Yeah.
Like it would be like the first guy, right? Like the garden.
Yeah, you have to
Grove
dodge his
Guardian.
attacks.
Yeah, if you block his like 3-hit combo, it just shatters your stamina after 2 hits.
Yeah.
And then the third one demolishes you.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much more depth to it also than that. But like just basically speaking, yeah, like you do have to choose to block or dodge or to blodge, as I almost said.
Yeah.
You could blodge things.
Joe
which
de
is
Blagia.
you could do a Joe de Blagio type play style.
Or sword and have a great time. Those are your
Yeah.
two options.
Those are your 2 options. Or you could be the LA Dodgers, which is what I ended up
Right.
kind of going toward. Yeah, it was weird. This is why I'm so upset that I didn't know about the parry until today and never did one.
It's
because
you probably would have hated it. It is so slow to come out. You do it and it's almost just like a like it takes like forever. It is like such like a telegraphed animation that it feels almost like a joke.
maybe it is a joke. I just felt like my defensive options were because unlike in Souls games, in order to run, which is an underrated defensive option, like most people don't think to do it, but you can usually just run away from attacks. But in order to run in this, you have to commit to a dodge first.
Right.
Which is problematic early in the game because you don't have very much stamina and is like actively kind of hard to do after you get the crown and do the teleport dodge because all of a sudden your dodges are going super far.
Yeah, and you can do like 3 in a row and be like pew, pew,
Yeah, so there's almost no reason to at that point. But yeah, I found my defensive options to be like more limiting than I'm used to in this style of a game. And I think that there was one other pretty major hurdle for me to get over before I got actually good at this combat. And that was I had zero idea what kind of game this was when I started playing it.
Right.
The moment it became difficult, I had to like completely rearrange my fucking brain code because I was prepared to just have a chill evening on the couch. And then I was like fucking jumping around and like running away from dozens of enemies who were all chasing me at once.
You had to get the Dew and Doritos out.
I had to bust out the Dew and Doritos for this one to see if I could get any kind of a semblance of strategy down. But once I did, I find the combat in this game actually really rewarding. Surprisingly so, because it's very simple. But what it is good at is making you have to do resource management in a way that isn't just like staring at bars. You're like you can do a lot more without your stamina bar because it doesn't cost stamina to attack. So you can gauge like, okay, I need to recharge my stamina, so I just need to get away. And your stamina recharges slowly while you're sprinting, so you can kind of do that. Or do I just need to like stop attacking, let it recharge a bit, and dodge? There's like a lot of different options you have, and I find it to be like really actually very engaging. And I think especially encounters, even with regular enemies, are all pretty well like designed in a way that actually makes you use your moveset. It's not a button masher at all.
Yeah, no, it's surprisingly well designed. It's weird, like 2D games, like combat games, tend to not use a lock on. I think it's cool that this one has it. Like even like comparing it to something like Hyper Light Drifter, which I think has good 2D combat, like I think this is better. It feels really tight and polished in a way that like I think it's hard to accomplish. Combat systems are pretty difficult, it seems, to design.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it has like a great foundation. Yeah, it's like it's pretty simple. Yeah, and it feels really welcome. Like Zelda games usually have pretty simple combat, and I think this kind of like bolsters that side of the equation. Whereas like actual Zelda games usually kind of brush combat to the side a bit.
Yeah. And it does wear its inspiration on its sleeve a decent amount in terms of like its Dark Souls inspiration, because if you look at the level design, most levels are structured in that classic, and when I say Dark Souls, I am talking about like 2011's Dark Souls, not the franchise as a whole, because the worlds are all built in this way that is like, this is a big named zone. It has a bonfire, and it has several shortcuts that lead back to it, and all of the routes going from place to place have like bespoke designed enemy encounters inside of them. And so the combat has to work both as like the flashier, like dodge heavy boss combat, and the on the move, like taking encounter by encounter. I do want to say, in relation to that, is running away from enemies is a topic that weirdly is important to these, like, to this genre of game. And I feel like the designers of Tunic did not want people running away from enemies.
Right.
They specifically wanted you to fight everything every time, which I think is fine. But I don't think that the game is designed quite perfectly around it. Pretty well, but not perfectly. I think that the cathedral in specific stands out to me as an area where there are just too many enemies and too many obstacles to make it like... I at no point wanted to fight every enemy in the cathedral again.
Yeah.
The first time was good enough for me. And I just wanted to run through, but you end up with a train of people chasing you.
I ended up like routing that area pretty much at the end of the game to farm money.
There are a lot of
I got pretty good
there
at killing everything in there.
I'm curious, how what money did you need to farm?
I
I farmed one time.
Yeah,
so.
for the final boss, I had a lot of trouble with. So I
Okay,
wanted to
yeah.
buy like bombs and like decoys and blueberries and shit.
By the time that I was there, we can talk about bosses if you want to now.
Sure,
but
sure.
but by the time I was there, I was like to the point where I was like, I should go buy things. I checked, I had $20. I had one life worth because I had died so many times
Yeah.
that I had just lost all of my money.
Yeah, that's
So
why
there
I
was-
needed to farm it. Yeah.
Yeah. I was not about to. I didn't from the moment that I like had a route to the boss, I didn't leave. I just kept running it over and over again until I eventually beat it. Which I'm realizing like after the fact was I was not as well prepared as I thought I was. But we'll get into it. Yeah, so the bosses in this game generally I think are very good.
Mm-hmm.
They were frustrating. Several of them were anyway. I think my favorite boss by a mile is the scavenger boss. I think his fight is outstanding.
Is that the one that's like the kangaroo guy?
Hold on.
The one in the mine?
Yeah, the mine guy.
Yeah.
Is he a kangaroo?
I'm pretty sure that's what those guys are supposed to be.
I thought they were rats.
Oh, they might be rats. I replayed a good chunk of the game to capture footage, like a surprising amount, because knowledge really shrinks space in this game.
Yeah.
I did not get to that part, so I'm working on year-old memories.
Okay, that's fair. I thought that because I once mistook Jet Li for Tilda Swinton.
That is true. That did actually happen.
This is a real thing that happened. I thought maybe that I had just completely misread the image. I thought that was a very real possibility.
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
That
I
guy.
think by far that guy is my favorite fight in the
Yeah,
game.
I really like the librarian. Is probably my favorite.
Oh, really, least favorite fight.
But yeah, for me, like I played up like past the initial like guardian whatever boss without upgrading any of my stats. Because I overlooked that mechanic. So I feel like I just like got really good at the combat and felt like none of the combat felt that hard after like I had like made it through a third of the game on Soul Level 1.
Yeah. I will upload a companion video to this episode to the YouTube channel that I will call whatever his name is. That like Guardian easy kill,
Yeah.
like our Gwyn easy kill joke from the original Dark Souls episode, because I got him down to this was like keep in mind this was on like my 6th or 7th try against the boss. It wasn't like the first time. I got him down to like maybe an 1/8 of his health. I think I'll have to review the tapes. You'll see all of this in the companion video. And then he just fell off the map and died.
Wow.
Definitely is not supposed to happen. Like he had a problem.
Like the Iron Golem.
He kind of Iron Golemed himself, which I thought was hysterical. But I did feel a little bit robbed because I really liked that fight. But yeah, I think that one's like my second favorite fight.
Yeah,
in the game.
I really dislike the one that gives you the red Septagon piece, like the giant robot.
Oh yeah, Siege Engine.
Yeah, Siege Engine is probably my least favorite boss.
He is the worst boss mechanically, 100%, and I'm not gonna like make excuses for it. But I found him to be like the Lord Rykard of this game, where I felt like it was very easy and it was a spectacle. Like maybe with the exception of the Forest Guardian who threw himself off of a bridge, the only boss that took me fewer than 10 tries, and I'm pretty sure I beat him in 3. Like I think Siege Engine I just sort of like stabbed to death very quickly and then moved on. But like he's running around and shooting machine guns at you.
Yeah.
I thought it was a very cool fight.
It is cool how like fucking huge he is.
Yeah. But yeah, I agree. It's like the actual combat of the fight is not anything. It's just like most of the fight is running. The actual comparison would be the true final boss of Elden Ring.
Yeah.
Like that would be the actual, because like most of that fight you're just running in a circle and going like, can I jump in at either his front or his back to get a few hits in and then run away again?
Right.
But it's just so chaotic that I ended up liking it. But 100% would not blame anybody for putting that as their bottom, like least favorite boss.
Mm-hmm.
For me, the librarian I didn't like because it forced me to use magic. Because I can't fight him; he's too far away.
Yeah.
So I had to use the magic wand to just like shoot bullets at him most of the time. And I don't like that he just sort of is RNG. Like I feel like there were times when I lost to him that I had like no way of surviving. Where he would be like, I summon 4 guys. And also, here's a beam that goes across the entire stage.
Yeah.
Hope you were paying attention despite the fact that I'm not even on the camera. Like that kind of thing, like it just felt bad to die to. And the final boss has some things that feel bad to die to.
Yeah.
And I will sure talk about it when we get to it.
Mm-hmm.
But up until that point, like that was the one that I was just like frustrated with.
Yeah.
It took me probably twice as many tries to kill
really?
the scavenger boss. And I felt very engaged by it. Like it was a good fight. And I kept going back. Very quickly, I was tired of the library.
Yeah. I know. It landed in a sweet spot for me where it felt like not like just right on that line where it like wasn't too hard to keep track of everything he was doing. And I don't know, I like the difference in kind of having to like actually use the magic to beat him. And I just think the arena's cool. Like the library area I thought was like super awesome. And fighting him,
you put a library in the game, you're gonna love it.
yeah, and just fighting him on the roof was pretty cool.
Yeah. I just felt like there was something more they could have done to make the fight interesting other than just make him fly away. Like if there was even if it was hard to hit him, because like I ended up using magic, like in a way it was a good thing because it taught me that the magic wand was actually good in boss fights for dealing chip damage, like the guns in Devil May Cry,
or the bow and arrow in Momodora.
God of War. Oh, Momodora, yeah.
But yeah, also God of War.
Yeah. I was literally, I had a moment where I was like, is that even a real game that you just said? Like,
Reverie Under the Moonlight.
Yeah, like what a wild title that game has that I just forgot about entirely. But yeah, it did teach me that it was good, and I did end up using it in the subsequent fights. But yeah, I don't know. Just wish that I could have hit him with the sword a couple more times.
Yeah,
that's really my
that's
thing.
fair. I like that not every area has a boss. I like that there's only like 5 in the whole game.
I think it's 5 bosses. Yeah,
because like I was like expecting one in like the frog zone, and there just isn't one, and I actually like that. Like it kind of keeps you on your toes a little more.
I love the frog zone.
Yeah, it's a cool dungeon.
I think that it is probably wise for us to talk about the final boss in the boss conversation before going on. Because I was just going to be like, Frog Zone, let's go on.
We'll put a pin in Frog Zone.
Yeah.
Rudy's got the frog.
Like you're dissecting a frog. Put a pin in it.
Yeah.
So the final boss, the heir, is a devilish bastard. And very close. I got the bad ending when I completed the game. And I very nearly got the worst ending, which is where I couldn't beat the final boss. Like, I think it took me, like, about an hour to actually beat it.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe, like, 40, 45 minutes, somewhere in there.
Yeah, for me, like, the final boss is, like, 5 times harder than any of the other bosses. Like, it felt like such a difficulty spike.
Yeah, and it's so deceptive.
I beat
too.
my head against it for a long time, and then found out there was a phase 2. Like, it felt like a real slap in the face.
It does. It sucks ass. Fortunately, I mean, I don't know. This is where I feel like I need to talk about the part of the comment that I don't know. It, to me, feels intended, but maybe is not. I'm not sure. What level were your flasks? Your health potions, if you can remember this at all. I don't blame you if you can't.
Remember.
I felt like the healing
maybe
items.
Maybe 4? I don't remember.
Okay, maybe this is my fault then, because mine were 2.
Oh, that's so low.
They healed for effectively nothing, and this is how little they healed for. When my strategy for beating bosses in this game, I think for pretty much the entire game after Siege Engine, was to equip the red Tearstone ring, which the game doesn't give me a name for it, so I'm just going to call it by its Dark Souls name. It increases your damage when you're at low health. And abuse the fact that this game has very forgiving last hit forgiveness. Like, if you get hit when you're at low health, it'll reduce you to 1 HP most of the time, unless it was a really big hit.
Yeah.
So I would not heal until I was at 1 HP, and then I would heal one time, and the amount that it healed was not enough to take me out of RTSR range. So the boss fight didn't start until I was at 1 HP, because I was dealing like little pissy damage, and then I would hit 1 HP and then I would melt them. Like, that was the thing. So I was always playing right on the edge of death. And the final boss, I that's when I was like, there is something wrong, and I must have missed something.
Yeah, I think your specialized definitely did you in here, because like I think on like in the capture footage when I'm playing, just like up to the Forest Guardian or whatever he's called, like I think I had the flask at level 3 by that point.
This cannot possibly be true. Maybe it is. I don't know. I'm not.
Is it
not
red
the number of flasks?
Yeah. I'm talking. Yeah, the level of it.
Yeah. No, it's the ones that like come in a little bundle, and you have to collect 3 of them to level up your flask healing. Because I had 8 flasks total.
Right.
But they were all. I had only leveled them up 1 time, I think, maybe 2. It's a 2 in the menu, so I don't know if I did it twice or if I did it once they start at level 1. I'm not sure. But yeah, I was getting very little healing from them, and then the second phase of the fight is she gets like the ability to the health melting ability. And the downside of that is that it's a damage over time effect, which means that if I got hit when I was at low health, it would bring me to 1 and then kill me. So I would go through the first phase over and over and over and over again, get to the second phase and just die within 10 seconds and not have built any information about what happened in the second phase.
Yeah, it felt like the level of like, and people can call me a pussy baby or whatever. I can take it. But like DLC like Dark Souls bosses, like Sister Freed or Lady Maria, etc., Orphan of Cause, whatever. Like they just feel like a level of hard to me that it's just like not fun to fight against. Where it's like, you spend so much time like not even getting them half dead and then dying and having to go back. Like the first phase took me forever, and when there was a second one, I was like, fuck Tunic.
I said that so many times today.
And I hadn't had that experience until that point. Like I thought it felt like a good level of difficulty, and then dial it a little too high for my liking.
Yeah, I had 3 that's enough Tunic for tonight experiences in the game. And the first one was in the quarry before I realized, and this one was very short-lived.
Yeah, the gas mask.
Yeah, I didn't. Once I found the gas mask, I was like, this is actually fine. I was overreacting, but I was like, I have to dodge people shooting at me with guns. but the only cover I have to hide behind drains my maximum health. And I was like, this is terrible. Because, like, they're difficult to, like, time because their charge up sound only happens at the beginning. And if you're hiding, they won't shoot. So they're just silent until they shoot. And so I was like, I would hide and let it shoot the thing. And my max health's going down the whole time. And I'm running away. And I found the gas mask and I was like, okay, this is fine, whatever. Then the second moment was in the fight with the librarian, where I was just like, I hate this. I hate running around. I hate that I have to have like magic potions to keep my magic up so I can keep doing damage to him. And then the last time was like, I had been fighting the final boss for 25 minutes and hadn't seen I'd gotten to the second phase, and then I went 25 more minutes before I saw the second phase again, and I realized that I was getting worse.
Yeah.
And I was like, should I just quit? Like, am I too tired? My hands are kind of hurting.
That's the feeling I'm talking about. I don't like when bosses give me that feeling.
Yeah. It was just too much. And I was like right about to quit. I was like, I mean, I don't know if I really would have, or if I would have been like, just one more try, whatever. But I got to the point where I ran in just totally ready to die. I was like, I don't care. I'm just going to keep trying for a little bit, and then I'll watch the ending on YouTube or whatever, and then we'll talk about the game. And I'll just eat crow on this one. But I fucking run in, and like, it's not even a good run, but the thing about the RTSR, like low health, high damage setup, is that you can stun lock the final boss, which is very wild. And I didn't know if you could do it in the second phase. And I actually managed to catch her in a loop where she couldn't do anything, so I just killed the first phase. And then the second phase, I immediately got hit with 2 attacks in a row, which put me at 1 HP. And then I just mashed the B button for a while and was like, I don't know, maybe this will do, because I'm definitely dying. And it just worked. Like, I have it clipped.
Nice.
She literally just, like, falls over, and then you hit her a bunch, and then she does the falling over animation again. And I beat it. And I was like, I didn't expect that at all. It wasn't especially satisfying because I didn't really have like a great fight with the boss. I just hit her a bunch of times.
Hey, I mean, whatever it takes, you know.
I know, I was using some underhanded tactics for this one, but
I think it encourages it. Like, anything you look up online is like, use the ice spell to freeze her, and then like throw decoys, and then throw bombs at her, and like, you know, like you have to like do the like Zelda thing where you have to like use the arsenal of things you have to find some way to beat her. Oh, and also, is she explicitly female? Because I also perceived her as feminine, but I saw a thing online where someone was calling them a he. I was like, well, they are called the heir. And if you think of like, you know, like in the real world, like the heir to royalty is usually a guy.
True.
But this is a fantasy world, so it doesn't have to abide by the same rules.
That is true. I think that it's coded that I'm saying she. I think that this character is coded as feminine. However, I think that if that is wrong, I don't think that he is correct either. I think it is totally fair to say that this is androgynous.
Yeah, like a Gwendolyn kind of thing.
Yeah. Except Gwendolyn is specifically... We don't want to talk about... I don't want to get into Gwendolyn.
Gwendolyn's pronouns.
Gwendolyn is a very challenging character gender-wise.
Yeah, because like Gwendolyn was raised female, but we have no idea whether or not Gwendolyn liked that.
Correct, yeah. Gwendolyn does not use pronouns to refer to themselves.
Right, that we ever hear.
Is Gwendolyn non-binary? Are they trans?
Maybe.
Are they... No one knows at this point.
I'm trying to remember in Dark Souls 3, there's is it Yorshka? Refers to Gwendolyn as her brother. Okay. So that might imply that Gwendolyn himself, or themselves, used he/him pronouns.
So they could identify masculine.
Yeah, but Gwyn made them identify feminine.
Right. Which is abuse.
Yes. But we don't know. This is all speculation. This has been the Dark Souls corner.
Yeah. This whole podcast is dark, let's be honest.
Yeah.
One thing that you mentioned there, I mean, I don't know, do you have anything else on the final boss? Because, like...
No.
Yeah. I will say, I guess, kind of on the topic that we were just on, they are called the heir, but specifically what they are an heir to is unending isolation in a jail of somebody's design.
What is it, a dodecahedron or whatever?
Yeah, it is like a dodecahedron. So my guess is that heir is gender neutral in this case because they aren't actually inheriting anything.
Right. Except for misery?
Except misery, yeah. But moving on, one thing that you did mention there in the final boss is the idea of like using all of the items and stuff. And one of the things I found interesting was that the game doesn't tell you what any of the items do.
Right.
Ever. You just kind of have to experiment and figure them out.
It's one of those, I think we talked about this on like WarioWare or something, that like, if you've just played enough video games, it's kind of crazy how you can just intuit what things do. Like the hook shot item, like I don't remember
the magic orb.
Yeah, first off, I guess those like tuning fork things around the world. Like I kept I had a hair up my ass about those. Like I kept hitting them and being like, "What are these gonna do?" That's got to be.
Do I have to hit him in a specific order?
This is going to tie into the big puzzle or whatever. They don't. They're just grapple points. Right. And I was like, once that finally happened, that was a load off my mind. But I don't remember exactly the feeling of getting it the first time. But like you get it, and in like 5 seconds, you're like, oh, this is the hook shot. You know, like it's weird how like intuitive it is if you've played video games before.
Yeah. And that is true. I think that most of as mentioned, I didn't get the fucking time twister.
Yeah.
Or the, whatever else, the magic dagger.
Yeah.
During my actual playthrough. But the ones that I did have were pretty self-explanatory. My main concern, because it works well when it's like a firecracker, which you would assume explodes. Mm-hmm. Unless you're a Sekiro fan, and then you assume that it makes noise.
Yeah, there are things like the blueberries and stuff that you don't know what they do.
Right. But the fact that there's a blue and red one, depending on when you try and use them. My concern is I was in a fight and desperately trying to find something to do, and put in the one that is your head.
Oh,
and I tried to use it, but that's just like the souls from Dark Souls, where you crack it and you get money. And I just died because of it.
I don't know that I ever actually used one of those.
Yeah, that's what they are.
I they looked like bomb chews, so I kind of thought.
And you said, "Fuck that."
Yeah. So whoops.
Yeah, they're pretty weird. The decoys, I only found 2 in the entire game.
Yeah,
and I wasted the first one just figuring out what it was.
Yeah, it's one of those things you can buy from the big skelly merchant, but
true. Yeah. I don't know how much they cost though. I
don't remember.
Never really bought much from him. I bought a flask.
Yeah, I didn't really until like the end.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, the first time I went in there, I spent all of my money buying bombs.
Yeah,
because I was like, I don't know what else to do with this money. Maybe this is easy to come by. And I don't know, it kind of was. I don't think I did farm one time, and it was just to get like 100 at some point that I needed for an upgrade. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, I did not shop very much, which means that I usually had all of the experience I needed for the level up items. Mm-hmm. But I can imagine that the game probably wants you to shop. They have like a thing where if you use items enough times, it'll replenish one on rest, which is very cool. But I only ever got it on one item, and it was the firecracker bombs. So I didn't convince me. I know they wanted to convince me.
Yeah.
Just like they didn't want me to run past enemies. But that's a mechanic for a reason. But yeah, it did not convince me to use items as much. Felt like the magic wand did me just fine.
Yeah. Did you want to talk about Frog Zone?
Oh yeah, we should talk about the levels. Is what I was kind of getting at.
The dungeons, the areas.
Yeah, I get excited about Frog Zone thematically, because this is one of the things that we haven't talked about yet is sort of the aesthetics of the game.
Yeah.
And Frog Zone was the thing that pulled me more into the narrative than the other areas, because I think all of the areas look exceptionally pretty.
Mm-hmm.
But Frog Zone is mysterious.
Yeah.
I love when you get to the vault, it says already stolen. Like, what a choice of words.
Mm-hmm.
Where you have to now go find somebody who took the magic orb to get it from them, or the key, whatever. Yeah, it's the key that's stolen by the librarian.
Right.
And so you have to like go through all of these things to like puzzle out like what's going on. It was such like a cool thematic location, and the frogs are cool.
Yeah.
I like the big frogs that can pull you off of ledges and shit. It's great.
Yeah, they can do what the item does. I thought that was like a cool thematic stuff. But I like that it's like nested in another level. Like that like beach area. Like it gives you that feeling of like once you find it, you're like, oh, should I like turn around and go like finish the area I was doing, or do I just keep going?
Right.
So yeah, it was like a cool area to stumble upon.
Yeah, and this is one of those areas where the game's like hands-off approach to showing you where to go really works, because I didn't find Frog Zone. There's a name for this area. We're just gonna keep calling it Frog Zone.
Yeah.
I didn't find Frog Zone until I had lit all of the things, and then after you do that, you pray to the statue. It pops up, and then you go through a teleporter, and the teleporter takes you to an island, and you can't get to the other place. But there's a tuning fork over there.
Yeah.
And so it all comes together. You go, right, I can't get over there until I have an item that is the hook shot from The Legend of Zelda.
Right.
Which I'm thinking about because my character is wearing a green tunic, and it's all designed in this Zelda-y way. And I was just delighted by that. The fact that that the game was able to give me a revelation, explain what it is that I needed, all by just existing. And then I got looking for a new zone. I knew about Frog Zone because of the way that the manual is laid out. Where sometimes, because you get a front and back page, you'll get a relevant piece of information now, and then a fucking splash screen for the next party of the game, and you go, oh, I'm intrigued. What does this mean?
Yeah.
Love it. Any standout zones?
I think the other big standout zone is the mine. It feels like the most unexpected area. It's foreshadowed a little bit by like all of like the energy that runs around the island. It's got to be coming from somewhere. And then like there's like one like scripted part where like one of those energy monsters like sees you and then runs away from like the foreground or whatever. So like actually getting to that area and like needing the gas mask to traverse it, and it like going down into this like subterranean lab and shit. Like I thought that was all really awesome.
Yeah, that's the one thing. I'm sure at this point that there's some kind of VaatiVidya Tunic channel, or like at least some video essay. Yeah, but it's so strange to think about because like, what is any of that? It's so crazy. Like, obviously I am in love with it. And like every one of the obelisks has like a fucking cat demon inside of it.
Yeah.
That's cool. But what are they? And like, why are the people upstairs using effectively like magical electricity and also sticks as weapons? And they're like oozes and stuff.
Yeah.
Like it's a cool like sci-fi fantasy blend that makes you ask a lot of questions.
Yeah, I once again played it like a year ago, so I don't I have even less of a grasp on it than you. But like it almost feels like there has to be some kind of like a like the civilization fell and then like a new one came in and found like the technology and used it to rebuild or something. It has that kind of energy to it. And like made like the rats were like slave labor and stuff. You know, like there's some kind of like things you can grasp onto, but I have no idea what the details are.
Yeah, it is very vague, and obviously, potentially more obviously than any other game in existence, it is left sort of
Ambiguous, yeah.
yeah, ambiguous. Maybe not open ended. There's probably definitive like answers to a lot of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like it clearly doesn't want you to know all the information. It goes so far as to not show you words in languages you can read.
Right.
So it's like, yeah. So I absolutely allow it, but like that shift in tone as you like go down the elevator into the depths from the quarry is just an absolute fucking delight. Where you're just like, all of a sudden everything is like a little scary now.
Yeah, good use of the camera, I think, like to zoom out and stuff when it's appropriate.
Yeah. Speaking of cameras, maybe, I don't know. I don't know if this is good. I thought this game looked amazing.
Oh yeah.
Potentially the best looking game that I've played this year.
Okay.
Like,
I
think that I think these visuals are incredible. Like, it is a simple style, but it's done so like artistically that it really just like it drew me in instantaneously. You're like a cute little fox, which is appealing, but not really special. But then everything is in this diorama style. There's like a consistency to everything. Like all of the zones have like these shared elements that feel like they're really connected as a world. And I love all the effects, like the visual effects in the game are very like effective at what they do. I think it looks extremely good. And I was constantly, it's like eye candy, but my eyes are diabetic.
No, I agree. It does have great art direction, and like I love. My favorite little detail is just the bushes are like angular. I don't know what shapes to call them, but like they're so like satisfying to cut down. They like bounce and stuff. So yeah, like
they're like keycaps.
Yeah,
sort of like a little flat pyramid.
But it all just looks great. And I know I complained a little for like visibility about like the forest area, like how much like detail there is there. But like just like as a still image, it looks fantastic.
Oh yeah, this is a thing that you could see somebody selling as a poster or something. I think it looks super good. I also really like the music in the game.
Yeah, the music slaps.
It does. It's so chill. And I love when you're in the overworld for a little while and the little triplet part comes in.
Yeah.
And you're like, ooh, I'm grooving now. And then you're in a boss fight and it's still kind of chill, which is great because I am not chill at that moment. I'm very loud. So it was a good counterbalance to it.
Yeah, I think for me, it really like hits add it to the list. Another thing that hits a real sweet spot for me in the game is like the music, like it has that kind of like chill lo-fi vibe, but then also manages to have like catchy melodies. Like I feel like it feels like the perfect middle ground between two different styles of video game music that just like really does it for me.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Like some of the stuff God, it's been 7 years since we talked about Hyperlight Drifter.
Oh god, yeah, it's been a long time.
But that is the thing that to me most comes to mind because I think we liked the vibe of the soundtrack and we thought that the soundtrack was like great ambiance.
Yeah, but it's a little too what's the word? I guess ambient.
Yeah, like it fails at being like a memorable soundtrack. Yeah. Because it doesn't have those melodies, and this does. Like, it mixes really well, and to me sells me on it. Like, I think it's outstanding. In its
Yeah,
in its
there's
field.
a lot of good YouTube mixes of Tunic music.
That tracks.
Yeah. I guess just one like random straggly thing that I forgot to mention when we were talking about the manual and opening the door at the end of the game. The way you find one of the like the grid, you have to fill out the grid to open the door to find all the combination. The way you get one of the squares on the grid is you have to quit out of the game. And then when you go to load the game, there will be a new save file there that's got like 999 hours and 59 minutes of playtime. And you load it up, and it's like this top-down like dungeon crawly area that's got like a yellow line on the ground. So you just like walk through it and it loops. So you just have to like draw the shape of the yellow line to get that piece of the square.
How does it know?
I think you have to have found the page that cues you into it.
Okay, that makes sense.
Or something. I don't know what triggers it, but like I found when I found that, I was like, what the fuck? Like, I thought that was so cool.
I played this on the Switch, and it's the only thing I'm playing on the Switch at the moment, which means that I never quit out of the game.
Yeah.
I always just put the Switch into sleep mode, and I feel robbed because I would have loved to have seen that.
Well, yeah, try it after we're done recording. Quit out of the game and see if it's there, because it probably
Fair,
is. Yeah, since you beat the game.
Yeah.
So I thought, add that
page
to the pile of one of my favorite things that the game does.
Do we have Frog Zone thoughts?
My Frog Zone thoughts. I think this game is great. I keep making reference to it, but like it's very much my kind of game. Very similar to the kind of thing I would want to make if I made a game. I think like the blend of like Zelda and Dark Souls is something that just like makes a lot of sense. And I like that like a handful of indie games have like tried that. So yeah, like it's I love the focus on exploration and like the not holding your hand. Like I think it really does actually successfully kind of evoke the feeling of playing games as a kid. Like, you know, like playing an old NES game that you just kind of like played and you just kind of had to figure it out. And yeah, like I think like the manual is like a really clever idea. It almost has like Kojima energy, like hiding clues in the manual. It's just a really inspired idea and executed very, very well. I personally wish it was a little bit more accessible, but like I think it, for what it's going for, I think it really nails it. And yeah, it's a really solid like Zelda Dark Souls style game just on its own without all the secret stuff, but like the secret stuff I think really elevate it up to that tier of like exceptional indie games. So yeah, it really feels like a modern indie classic. Add it to the pantheon. So yeah, I had a great time with it, and it really enjoyed coming back to it to capture footage for the video. So easy to get back into if you ever want to go for a second playthrough.
Yeah, I had to Google just now before I get into my final thoughts to see if Tunic has an assist mode or an easy mode. Apparently it does. It's called No Fail. Because I was gonna comment on it. Like, I know there's a big debate. Like, does Dark Souls have should Dark Souls have an easy mode? And we can have that debate at some point if we wanted to, but Dark Souls is not going to be purchased accidentally by a 12-year-old. And Tunic absolutely will be, and they will be stonewalled within half an hour of playing the game. And it should have an easy mode so that person can play the fun Fox game. Christ almighty, and I'm glad that it does. Anyway, my Frog Zone thoughts, which is, of course, in this case, Frog 'S own thoughts. These are thoughts of my frog. Yeah, I think that this is a fantastic game, and I hated it. I think that this game is like a brilliant blending of multiple sort of like inspirations and genres, and it was so frustrating that I want to die. Uh, it is. It is one of my favorite kinds of game, which is a game that I have really complicated thoughts about. It's a game that I cannot recommend to everybody because the game is just too fucking hard to complete. Like, it's a very difficult game when it wants to be, but it does so much well. The manual is an absolutely outstanding part of it, obviously, that brings this whole other layer to the game that makes you have to think about it in different ways. The combat is extremely fun to like get into. It's got more depth than you would think while still being simple enough that it's easy to play while you learn, so you never feel like you're just like practicing. You're always doing something. But it has long periods of time where I feel like it should be doing more to help the player progress. I think the end of the game is kills the momentum of it, and I and that final boss is so fucking brutal. But it seems like one of those things that like over time I will probably warm up to more and more, similar to many other Souls game bosses that I have in the past. So I have complaints. Some of them aren't complaints. Some of them are just me like being upset with the game. But it does so much to bring it back that like I feel like if you're looking for a Souls game, like a Souls-like that doesn't look like a Souls-like in the way that like Lords of the Fallen or whatever has, this is like 100% like this is the best non-Souls game since Dark Souls 1. Because it takes that. This is Dark Souls 2 if it was a good game. There's a lot of like that DNA in here and done in an extremely good way. I think if you're just looking for like an indie action game, Hyper Light Drifter probably does you a little bit better because it's more straightforward. It's not gonna make you read a book in another language to figure out how to progress. But if like the puzzles and stuff are part of the thing that draws you to the genre and draws you to this type of game, or if you just have nostalgia for that era, I think this game's really fucking good. And it's something that I will have to wrestle with for the rest of my life, whether I really liked or really did not like this game. And I don't know. I genuinely don't know.
Yeah,
but I am happy to play it.
I feel like give it a few months and you'll look back on it fondly.
Oh, I already look back on it fondly. 2 hours ago, I was saying that it was the worst game ever made because I died to the boss 40 times. And now I'm like, but it was pretty cool. And I had to like MacGyver a strategy together out of the things that I had that I didn't even know what they did mostly. It's good times and bad times. Thank you for listening to No Clip this week.
What are we talking about next time?
Next time, we're going to be talking about an even harder game, Super Mario Brothers Wonder. I don't know anything, actually, about the difficulty of this game, but from what I've seen, I doubt that it will be Tunic hard.
Yeah, I imagine it will be like all Nintendo games nowadays, where it will be pretty easy, and then we'll have some really hard stuff at the end.
Right, which we may or may not even get to or know exists.
Yeah.
So that'll be exciting to find out on the next episode.
Fuck yeah.
Fuck yeah. Until that time, you can get a hold of us. All of our contact information is on our website at noclippodcast.com or on splattershot.pro. There you can find links to our email address, our Twitter account, our Discord server where you can suggest games for us to play. I know a couple of people on there were kind of excited about us doing Tunic, so I hope that we did a good job for them.
Mm-hmm.
You can find all of our old episodes and links to our YouTube channel, which also contains all of our episodes, including ones that we did on every Legend of Zelda game ever made.
Yep. And
most of the Dark Souls games.
yeah.
That's not entirely. Most recently, like
Elden Ring,
Twilight Princess,
Tears of the Kingdom.
Did Shovel Knight, which is also like a throwback game.
Yeah, maybe like Hollow Knight. It's like another indie game that takes some Souls inspiration.
I would bet that the overlap between people who like Tunic and people who like Hollow Knight is like 100%.
98%. Yeah.
Yeah.
That seems about right.
Yeah, I would agree. Do you think that Tunic will have a DLC teased and then it'll turn into a whole other game and it'll just be called Silk Tunic?
Yeah, that joke had a better punchline than I was expecting.
Not like good, but it took you enough off guard that you still laughed.
Yep.
I'll take it. I'll take it. Just like I'll take one subscription from you, the listener, please. Thank you.
Hookshot that like button.
Fuck yeah.
Solve a cryptic The Witness style puzzle in the comment section.
Leave comments under this video that are just series of line symbols.
Yeah,
and have somebody figure it out.
The Golden Cross or whatever it's called. Or
No,
the
Holy
Cross. And it's the Golden Path.
It is,
Yeah.
yes. Look, we solved the ARG. We know all these terms.
My horn is up.